Thank you, Rudrangshuda, eminent members on the panel, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, entrepreneurship is very simple because in 10 minutes, we can become an entrepreneur. But let me begin by saying a small story. It's about the childhood I grew up in. I'm happy that my father worked very hard to make a success of his life. But when I was a young boy, and maybe I was about 12 years old, we were not that well-to-do. We came from a family with a lot of tradition, but as it happens in many families, you went through a bad patch. So when I was growing up, I used to see my father wake up at much before 6 in the morning every day, whenever he was in Calcutta, which was less than 10, 12 days in a month, and book a call. In those days, you had that black telephone, and it was quite a struggle to get through to a number to book a call. And it used to be done at that time because before 8 o'clock, if the call materialized, it was half the rate, and then it would have become double the rate. Also, my father told me that if you book early enough, you could get an ordinary call through, but if you book later, then you need to have an urgent call, which was again double the rate. So I grew up in an atmosphere where entrepreneurship to me was a commitment and a passion. It was beyond the fact of making money. When I look at things around, and I sometimes get the opportunity to speak to young people at business schools when I'm invited as a guest speaker, they often ask the simple question that don't you need a lot of money to be an entrepreneur? Now, I have been a reader of sorts, and I have read many biographies, and of the many that I have read, most of the entrepreneurs that I feel iconic about have been people who actually started with nothing. So here lies the tale that really money is certainly important to some extent, and I wouldn't undermine its importance, but you can become a successful entrepreneur with another thing, and which is an idea. An idea, and more than anything else, an inspiration to achieve and to go through the difficult processes that idea to materialize might put you to. In Bengal in particular, having a chakri or a job is often a lot more revered than really being an entrepreneur. I'm sure many of you would have heard this story, but for the benefit of those who've come from other parts of India, there's a tale of a father having 3 daughters. The first daughter had got married to an engineer, the second daughter to a business management graduate, and the third daughter, when she found a boy of her choice, she came to the father and said that, "Father, this is the boy I want to marry." He says, "What does he do?" He said, "Papa, he's an entrepreneur, and he does his own business." So the father was aghast. He says, "See how your 2 sisters have done so well. They have chosen an entrepreneur, they've chosen an engineer, they've chosen an MBA, and you are so stupid you went and got hold of a guy who actually has to pay his own salary." So, the daughter was squirming, the boy was right there, and she was trying to calm down her father. And later on, it was disclosed that he was the entrepreneur who was running the 2 companies where the 2 son-in-laws were employed. And that still didn't settle the case. I think the father still hoped that somebody should pay his salary. He shouldn't have to get it for himself. But that culture I am very, very happy to say, fast changing. Of my many interactions, and at least a few every year that I manage to have with students in the city, I can see a new energy, particularly over the last 7, 8, 10 years. I have seen a huge metamorphosis in thinking, And I definitely feel that this augurs very well for an entrepreneurial culture in our country. I would like to also add that integrity is the cornerstone of success, irrespective of any field that you are in, and certainly for entrepreneurs. Because the underlying, and I think the most significant part of building an organization and trying to deliver whatever you have promised is trust. And trust cannot come without integrity. Often we feel and we read and get a bit confused when we see that many cases of integrity violations have actually led to success. But as much as we know that, we don't know how they sustain. My own understanding is that everything can succeed for a short while. But for a success to be sustainable, it has to be built on a bedrock and a foundation of something solid. And to me, integrity is that very foundation. The second aspect that I wish to emphasize in building an entrepreneurial culture is about inspiration. I often tell my colleagues in my office that I have almost 99% of my owned wealth invested in the company that I run. Most people who work in companies, even if they are listed and they have an opportunity to invest in it, if you will see that of their wealth, a person who's working in a company would have invested a very small portion of it, maybe 10, 20% of it into that company, and a lot more in other investments, so-called to hedge their risks. In a sense, an entrepreneur he gets onto a ship, actually puts on a belt. If the ship sails and reaches its destination, of course he gets there, but if it sinks, he's the first one to go down under. He doesn't have a lifeboat to get out of it. I think it's the commitment to that particular idea, and that can only happen if there is something more than building wealth and building or making a fortune that would drive you. You cannot get, in my opinion, so inspired just by the lure of having more money as much as you can if the idea is so compelling that you cannot sleep, you dream about it, all the time you think about it, even when you're socializing in parties, somewhere at the back of your mind you're thinking about that very idea and how to make it work. That's the kind of entrepreneurship that really would turn out to be successful. I also feel and believe that when you have that kind of energy and you have that kind of commitment, somehow money gets attracted. Somehow bankers come on board, somehow other investors come on board, because somewhere you exude that kind of energy that makes people want to go along with your story and invest in your story. So when people often say that it's difficult to find money, I say probably you need to introspect and ask yourself, do you really have a compelling idea? And do you really have an inspired vision about that idea? If you do, you might face hurdles. I mean, I'm sure that all of us have faced enough hurdles, but I sincerely believe that those hurdles will get overcome, and you will be able to find a sweet spot. You will be able to find people who would buy into your idea and support your initiative. I just want to conclude by saying that I wouldn't trade myself to do anything else but be an entrepreneur. Maybe also because I don't know how to do anything else. And I would like to encourage every young person to consider this. Of course, everyone is not suitable for it. I think we have some brilliant entrepreneurs on the dais today, so I won't take more of your time. I thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Rudhanshuda.